Many people assume that a narcissistic person never looks back. They believe this person simply finds someone else, moves forward without regret, and eventually forgets the person who once loved them so deeply. From the outside, that assumption can appear completely accurate because it fits what people can see. There may be cold silence, sudden confidence, a new romantic partner, and cheerful pictures that make it seem as though nothing meaningful was ever lost. But beneath that carefully protected image, a very different story may be taking shape. One that people around them rarely notice, one that even the person going through it may struggle to understand. The deepest emotional breakdown does not always happen while the relationship is ending. Sometimes it begins only after the person who provided genuine love is truly gone. Losing attention is one experience. Losing genuine emotional safety is something else entirely. Praise can often be replaced. New admirers can easily appear. Another relationship can begin within a short time, but the steady presence of someone who offered patience, loyalty, understanding, and emotional security is much more difficult to recreate. And that is where the reality becomes more complicated than the simple stories often told online. In this video, we are going to explore what may happen when someone with strong narcissistic patterns loses a person who gave them more than admiration. This was the person who remained through difficult moments, listened through emotional storms, and continued showing care even when the other person was far from perfect. You will understand why the first reaction can be deceptive, why regret may surface much later, and how a private emotional struggle can unfold behind an image of confidence. Stay with me until the end, because the final realization can be the most painful part. The biggest loss may not simply be the relationship. It may be realizing that something genuinely rare has been lost and can no longer be brought back. It is important to understand that narcissistic behavior exists along a spectrum. Not every confident person is secretly suffering, and not every individual with narcissistic traits responds in exactly the same way. Some people may display only a handful of defensive behaviors, while others may have deeply rooted patterns that repeatedly harm their closest relationships. Emotional awareness, maturity, personal experiences, and the willingness to change can all influence what happens next. This conversation is not about putting a label on every difficult person or suggesting that every individual follows one identical pattern. It is about recognizing behaviors that can appear when someone relies heavily on admiration, control, and external approval in order to feel valuable. Confidence is not always evidence of inner emotional strength. Sometimes, confidence becomes a protective covering. It can hide insecurity, shame, fear, and the deeper belief that without constant attention, the person may not be worthy enough. Genuine love is also very different from admiration. Admiration says, "You are impressive." Validation says, "You are special." Control says, "Nothing can surprise you or make you feel threatened." But genuine love communicates something much deeper. It says, "You are still accepted when you fail, struggle, or allow yourself to be vulnerable." For someone who has spent years protecting an ideal version of themselves, that kind of love can feel both safe and terrifying. It offers acceptance, but it also creates real closeness. And closeness brings the hidden parts of a person into view, including the parts they have spent years trying to protect. This is why someone can crave intimacy while fearing it at the exact same time. They may want love deeply, yet reject the vulnerability that real love requires. The closer another person comes, the more threatening honesty can become. Kindness can be interpreted as weakness. A healthy boundary can feel like rejection. A calm discussion can sound like criticism. Little by little, the person who once brought stability becomes the same person who activates the deepest fears. That painful contradiction helps explain why some meaningful relationships end in ways that seem confusing, irrational, and deeply self-destructive. The first days following the breakup often create the greatest misunderstanding. Most people expect to see sadness, regret, or obvious emotional pain. Instead, the person may appear happier than they have ever been. They may seem calm, confident, and completely unaffected. They could start posting more photos, spending time with new people, working longer hours, changing their appearance, or entering another relationship almost immediately. For the former partner, watching this can feel incredibly cruel. It can create the heartbreaking impression that the entire relationship never mattered. But what appears first is not necessarily what is most honest. Sometimes it is a defense mechanism. Losing a relationship can threaten the image of being powerful, desirable, and emotionally unreachable. Fully accepting the pain would require admitting that another person actually mattered. It might also force them to face the fear that the person who left may never come back. So the mind creates a different version of reality. The relationship was never important. The former partner was the problem. Someone better will come along. Life is getting better. Nothing meaningful was lost. That story can provide temporary emotional relief. It allows the person to avoid grief while continuing to display strength. Finding a replacement quickly can function almost like emotional anesthesia. New attention creates energy. Compliments provide reassurance. Flirting brings excitement. Every message, every compliment, and every sign of interest becomes evidence that they are still wanted. Friends might describe this as moving on quickly. Social media can make it look like a victory, yet emotional healing and emotional avoidance can look almost exactly the same from the outside. One person may truly be recovering, while another is simply keeping themselves busy enough to avoid feeling anything. That distinction is extremely important. A smile does not necessarily mean inner peace. Silence does not automatically mean indifference. And being with someone new does not prove that the previous relationship meant nothing. During this period, external validation can become especially important. Praise may temporarily quiet hidden doubts. Attention can create a short-lived sense of emotional stability. Success, appearance, expensive purchases, social gatherings, and public displays of confidence can all become ways of rebuilding a damaged self-image. Beneath the performance, the message is often very simple. I still have value, I am still desirable, I am still in control. For some time, this strategy can appear to work. Work fills the empty space. New interests occupy the mind. Social media provides a constant stream of stimulation. Another romantic partner brings fresh admiration. Silence is avoided before loneliness has enough time to become noticeable. But every distraction eventually reaches its limit. Human beings naturally become accustomed to new experiences. Compliments start feeling normal. The excitement slowly decreases. A new relationship begins to feel familiar. The emotional rush becomes weaker and shorter. Eventually, the same things that once created relief no longer have the same effect. And this is often the moment when reality begins pushing through the defenses. A song can unexpectedly bring back an old conversation. A familiar location can create an emotion that was not expected. A quiet night can suddenly become difficult to sit through. One small memory appears and is immediately pushed away. Then another one returns. The person may remind themselves that the past was never that special. They may focus on the arguments, the disappointments, and all the reasons the relationship ended. Remembering the negative parts can help protect the ego. If every problem can be blamed on the former partner, then there is no need to look closely at personal behavior. But as time passes, that protective story can begin developing small cracks. The person may start realizing that the new relationship does not feel quite the same. The attention is there, but the sense of comfort is missing. The admiration exists, but the deeper understanding is not there. Everything may look exciting on the outside, yet something important still feels absent. This can mark the beginning of a hidden emotional change. It rarely arrives through some dramatic moment or obvious announcement. Instead, it begins quietly, usually during those moments when everything around the person becomes still. Admiration and emotional safety satisfy completely different emotional needs. Admiration feeds the ego. It reassures someone that they are attractive, successful, entertaining, impressive, or important. Emotional safety provides something much deeper and more stable. It allows a person to relax without constantly having to perform. It develops trust through repeated experiences of patience, reliability, understanding, and consistency. Someone can receive endless praise and still feel profoundly alone. That contradiction can be difficult to understand because people often assume that attention is proof of happiness, but attention does not automatically create emotional closeness. A new partner may admire confidence, ambition, humor, charm, or appearance. Yet when pressure arrives, that admiration may not offer the comfort the person actually needs. When conflict appears, excitement may not be enough to create understanding. When vulnerability is exposed, attraction may not automatically turn into acceptance. And this is where comparisons can slowly begin. A conversation may feel less genuine than it once did. A disagreement may suddenly feel much more intense. A new partner may provide excitement, but not peace. Someone can offer plenty of attention, yet still fail to provide emotional safety. These comparisons may stay hidden because admitting them would challenge the belief that the previous relationship was easy to replace. The person may keep searching for another source of excitement, convincing themselves that the next achievement, the next experience, or the next romance will finally bring satisfaction. But the deeper issue may not be a lack of stimulation at all. It may be emotional hunger. Boredom can sometimes be a sign that someone is surrounded by constant activity while remaining disconnected from real intimacy. Every achievement feels temporary. Every new connection eventually loses its emotional power. The cycle keeps repeating because the deeper need has never actually been addressed. Little by little, ordinary memories from the previous relationship may begin to feel surprisingly meaningful. A quiet conversation after a difficult day, a partner who listened without expecting perfection, someone who stayed present even when emotions became overwhelming. At the time, these moments may have seemed completely ordinary. Once the relationship is gone, their value can become much easier to see. Human beings often recognize emotional safety most clearly after they have lost it, and that realization can be especially painful for someone who spent years pursuing excitement instead of stability. As more time passes, the person may begin looking at the relationship through a different emotional lens. In the beginning, the negative moments may have filled most of their thoughts. Arguments seemed bigger than the peaceful moments. Flaws felt impossible to overlook. This made it easier to justify leaving and maintain the belief that moving forward would be simple. But distance can change the way memory works. Slowly, the mind may begin bringing the best moments forward while pushing the painful details farther into the background. A simple conversation can suddenly feel priceless. A small act of loyalty can take on a completely different meaning. Familiar routines can become reminders of comfort. The former partner may gradually come to represent more than just another person. They may begin to symbolize safety, acceptance, stability, and a level of understanding that cannot be recreated overnight. The person may not fully understand why these memories continue appearing. They simply know that new experiences do not create the same emotional response. Career success feels incomplete, social attention feels empty, celebrations carry an unfamiliar sense of loneliness. Even when surrounded by other people, they may still feel unseen. This is a very different kind of loneliness. It is not about having no one around. It is about not having a genuine emotional connection. The person may continue sharing confident pictures and speaking as though everything is perfectly under control, but maintaining that image can gradually become harder. Quiet moments become uncomfortable because there is no longer enough noise to hide what is happening underneath. A private question keeps returning. If I was truly unaffected, then why is this one person still so difficult to forget? That question can feel threatening because it challenges the identity they have worked so hard to maintain. It suggests that the former partner mattered far more than they wanted to admit. It suggests that endless admiration cannot fully replace one person who offered real understanding. Pride may resist that realization, but the evidence continues building. New relationships do not feel as peaceful. Attention does not provide the same lasting comfort. The emotional emptiness keeps returning. This is where a deeper emotional wound may begin to surface. Losing someone important can challenge the image of being irreplaceable, independent, and always in control. A person may believe that anyone who leaves can simply be replaced, but when the loss continues affecting them, a painful contradiction becomes harder to escape. Why does this one person remain on their mind while so many others disappear? Why does the relationship still create such emotional tension? Why has achievement and success failed to erase the feeling? These questions may first create frustration before they ever create sadness. Small inconveniences can suddenly feel overwhelming. Minor criticism may become difficult to handle. Everyday disappointments can trigger unusually intense reactions. Instead of looking inward at the source of the discomfort, the person may blame other people because self-examination feels too threatening. One of the hardest emotions in this process can be shame. Sadness says, something valuable is gone. Shame says, this loss reveals something wrong with me. For someone whose identity depends heavily on appearing exceptional, shame can feel almost unbearable. Rather than admitting vulnerability, they may become even louder. They may boast more often, display even greater confidence, exaggerate their accomplishments, or repeatedly emphasize how much better their life has become. From the outside, this may look like increased strength, but sometimes the opposite is happening. The more intense the performance becomes, the greater the emotional pressure may be underneath it. Thoughts of the former partner can appear while driving, before falling asleep during a quiet meal, or even in the middle of an ordinary conversation. A familiar word, a certain place, or a song can suddenly bring back an entire emotional memory. The person may try to push those thoughts away, yet fighting against them can sometimes make them even stronger. They might quietly check the former partner's social media without interacting. They may casually ask mutual friends how that person is doing. They may privately look through old messages or photographs, and they may tell themselves, I'm only curious. But each new detail can carry more emotional weight than they want to admit. Seeing the former partner happy can feel like evidence that life has continued perfectly well without them. That reality can challenge the belief that they were unforgettable. Eventually, pride begins colliding with the desire to reconnect. After weeks, months, or sometimes even years of silence, a message may suddenly appear. It might be short and casual. It could ask how life has been. It might arrive on a birthday, during a holiday, or on a date connected to something from the past. Sometimes there may not even be an obvious reason for the timing. The contact can feel confusing because the former partner may have believed the story was completely finished. But unexpected contact does not automatically mean emotional growth has taken place. The desire to reconnect can come from loneliness, insecurity, nostalgia, or even a need to feel in control again. The person may genuinely miss the former partner, but missing someone is not the same as understanding how personal choices and behaviors damage the relationship. Sometimes the message is an emotional test. The person wants to discover whether access to the former partner still exists. They want confirmation that the emotional door has not completely closed. A fast response can create reassurance. Warmth can bring temporary relief. Even a small sign of continued interest can lower anxiety for a little while. The actual conversation may matter less than the confirmation that comes from it. That is why the message may be indirect. A shared memory might be brought up. A practical question may suddenly appear. An old photograph may receive a reaction. A simple greeting may arrive without any obvious reason. The person may be testing whether the former partner is still emotionally available. But reconnecting without accountability can simply recreate the same old pattern. Affection may be shown without ever addressing manipulation, emotional neglect, disrespect, or broken trust. The focus may remain on regaining access rather than repairing what was damaged. There may be conversations about timing, destiny, loneliness, or missed opportunities, while honest discussion about personal responsibility remains almost completely absent. That distinction matters enormously. Wanting someone back does not automatically mean becoming capable of treating them differently. Genuine change requires empathy, clear accountability, and consistent behavior over time. Without those things, renewed contact may simply reopen an old wound. Healthy boundaries can make this stage even harder. A delayed reply, a respectful refusal, or a clear statement that the relationship is over can trigger a powerful emotional response. The former partner is no longer playing the role the person expected. Instead of providing comfort, they demonstrate independence. Instead of reopening the relationship, they continue creating a life of their own. This can feel like the final loss of control. Some people respond through anger, others become silent again. Some may try reaching out through different methods. Others disappear completely once they realize the response they wanted is not coming. Beneath all these different reactions may be the same painful realization: the past cannot simply be restored whenever they decide they want to return. The emotional refuge they assumed would always remain available is no longer there. Eventually, the truth becomes impossible to negotiate with. The former partner has built a new life. The door is closed. Time has continued moving forward. The relationship now belongs to the past. This realization is rarely dramatic or public. There may be no confession and no visible emotional collapse. The deepest struggle can happen where nobody else can see it. Quiet evenings may feel heavier. Achievements can begin to feel incomplete. Celebrations may lose some of their emotional meaning. Life continues moving. Success may still be present. There may still be new people, new experiences, and new opportunities. But underneath everything is the awareness that one person cannot simply be replaced by finding someone else. People are not interchangeable. A new partner may possess different strengths, different qualities, and different forms of attraction, but emotional safety is built through shared history. Trust develops through countless moments of consistency, patience, forgiveness, and understanding. That bond is unique. Once it is gone, another relationship may provide excitement, but it cannot automatically recreate the emotional foundation that existed before. Sometimes this truth becomes clear only after several new relationships fail to provide the same sense of peace. And when the same emotional patterns keep appearing again and again, the person may finally begin noticing the common thread. Without self-awareness, this cycle can continue for years. A new relationship starts with powerful attraction, intense attention, and strong admiration. Then closeness grows, and the old fears begin returning. Vulnerability starts feeling dangerous. Criticism feels threatening. Emotional distance develops. Conflict appears. The relationship ends. Then the entire process begins again with someone new. The person may continue searching for the peace they once experienced, but they keep looking in places that cannot give it to them. Excitement becomes confused with connection. Attraction becomes confused with trust. Admiration becomes confused with love. Every disappointment quietly reinforces the realization that something important may have been lost a long time ago. Some people respond by chasing bigger achievements, greater influence, more attention, and increasingly impressive forms of validation. Every new victory can briefly cover the inner discomfort, but the relief never lasts. Others continue repeating the same romantic patterns with different partners. The faces change, but the emotional story remains almost exactly the same. Yet there is another possible path. Eventually, repeating the same story may become too obvious to ignore. The person may begin asking completely different questions. Instead of asking why everyone else keeps disappointing them, they may begin asking how their own behavior has contributed to the repeated losses. This change is often quiet. It starts with honesty. It means accepting that charm cannot replace empathy, confidence cannot replace emotional availability, and control cannot create genuine closeness. Real and lasting change also takes time. Deeply established personality patterns do not simply disappear overnight. The person has to learn new ways of dealing with rejection, disappointment, shame, and vulnerability. They must learn how to stay emotionally present even when closeness feels uncomfortable. They need to develop healthier ways of calming themselves that do not depend entirely on receiving constant reassurance from other people. Professional support can be useful throughout this process because awareness by itself is not always enough. Understanding where the pattern came from is only the beginning. The real goal is learning how to respond differently in the future. That is the difference between simply missing someone after losing them and actually growing because of the loss. The most important lesson is simple. Losing genuine love can challenge the identity a person has spent years trying to protect. Attention can return. Admiration can be found again. Success can continue. New relationships can begin. But genuine emotional safety is much harder to replace. And that is why certain losses can continue echoing long after everyone else believes the story has already ended. We should never judge emotional